12th century China, a vast and powerful land ruled by the Song Dynasty. Its cities thrived with trade and culture, and its people believed their empire would last forever. But beyond the northern borders, a new and dangerous power was rising, one that would soon bring China to the brink of collapse. From the frozen north came fierce warriors of the Jin dynasty. Masters of horseback combat, they moved like lightning across the plains. City after city fell before their unstoppable cavalry, and the once confident Song Empire suddenly faced a terrifying new enemy. Far from the battlefield, in a quiet farming village in Henan, a child was born in the year 1103. His family was poor, his future uncertain. Yet history would remember his name for centuries to come. That child was Yue Fei. Yue Fei's family owned little more than a small home and a few farming tools. But his mother believed her son was destined for greatness. She raised him with strict discipline and powerful lessons about honor, loyalty, and courage. When Yue Fei was still a child, disaster struck his village. A massive flood swept through the land, destroying homes and fields. In the chaos, Yue Fei's father tried to save the family, but the raging waters took his life. Miraculously, Yue Fei and his mother survived. Clinging to debris in the violent waters, they drifted through the night. From that moment on, his mother became the single guiding force in his life. As Yue Fei grew older, he trained relentlessly. Archery, martial arts, and military strategy became his daily routine. Though still a farmer's son, he was already preparing for a destiny far greater than village life. Day after day, he pushed his body to its limits. He practiced spear techniques, sword fighting, and battlefield tactics. Every movement sharpened his skill, preparing him for the wars that were coming. While Yue Fei trained, disaster struck the empire. In 1127, the northern invaders captured the Song capital during the devastating Jingkang incident. The emperor himself was taken prisoner. The once mighty Song dynasty had been humiliated, its rulers captured, its armies defeated. Across China, people feared their civilization might collapse. The empire desperately called for soldiers. Young men across China were summoned to defend their homeland. For Yue Fei, the moment he had trained for had finally arrived. Before joining the army, Yue Fei went to say goodbye to his mother. She looked at her son and understood the dangerous path he had chosen. But instead of stopping him, she prepared him for something unforgettable. In a moment that would become legend, his mother took a needle and tattooed 4 characters into her son's back: "Serve the country with utmost loyalty." The words burned into his flesh, but they also burned into his soul. From that moment forward, Yue Fei vowed to dedicate his life to defending China. With the tattoo of loyalty on his back, Yue Fei left his village behind. Ahead of him waited war, glory, and a destiny that would turn him into one of the greatest generals in Chinese history. Yue Fei arrived at a military camp filled with inexperienced recruits. Many were farmers and laborers who had never fought in battle. The empire needed soldiers quickly, and the training was harsh. But from the very beginning, Yue Fei stood out among them. During training, Yue Fei showed extraordinary skill with the bow. His arrows struck targets with perfect accuracy, even from great distances. Officers began to notice the quiet young soldier, whose discipline and focus were unlike anyone else. Soon, Yue Fei was sent into real combat. The empire was desperate to stop the invading armies of the Jin dynasty. For Yue Fei, the battlefield would become the ultimate test of his courage and skill. The first battles were brutal. The northern cavalry of the Jin Empire were fast and deadly. Many Song soldiers were inexperienced and afraid, but Yue Fei fought with calm determination, refusing to retreat. In the chaos of battle, Yue Fei showed incredible bravery. With spear in hand, he fought through enemy lines and protected wounded soldiers. His courage inspired the men around him, turning fear into determination. Commanders quickly noticed the young warrior. Unlike many soldiers, Yue Fei fought not only with strength, but with intelligence. He studied enemy movements carefully and adapted his tactics in the middle of battle. One day, Yue Fei proposed a daring plan. Instead of fighting the powerful cavalry directly, he would ambush them in narrow terrain. Hidden among the trees, his soldiers waited for the perfect moment to strike. The ambush worked perfectly. Caught in the narrow valley, the Jin cavalry lost their advantage. Yue Fei's soldiers attacked from every direction, forcing the enemy into a humiliating retreat. The victory shocked everyone. A small force led by a young officer had defeated one of the feared northern cavalry units. Yue Fei's reputation began spreading across the army. After several victories, Yue Fei was promoted to command his own unit. It was a small force at first, but it would soon grow into one of the most legendary armies in Chinese history. Yue Fei believed discipline was the key to victory. He trained his soldiers harder than any other commander. Every movement was practiced again and again until the army moved like a single, unstoppable force. But Yue Fei demanded something even more important. His soldiers were forbidden from stealing or harming civilians. Instead, they helped villagers rebuild homes destroyed by war. Because of this, the people trusted Yue Fei's army. Villagers welcomed them into their towns and offered food and supplies. The army became known not just for strength, but for honor. Soon, Yue Fei's growing force became known as the Yue family army. They were among the most disciplined and loyal soldiers in the entire empire. Now a rising commander, Yue Fei prepared for larger battles against the invading Jin dynasty. His army was ready, and soon the greatest victories of his life would begin. As the war intensified, Yue Fei's army continued to grow. More soldiers joined his ranks, inspired by his victories and his strict discipline. Soon, the Yue family army became one of the strongest forces defending the empire. Unlike many commanders, Yue Fei did not rely only on strength. Before every battle, he studied terrain, weather, and enemy movement. His careful planning often turned impossible battles into stunning victories. Across the battlefield, the powerful cavalry of the Jin Empire continued their campaign. For years, they had crushed armies across northern China, but now they were about to face a commander unlike any they had fought before. When the two armies met again, Yue Fei used new tactics. Instead of scattering before the enemy cavalry, his soldiers formed disciplined spear formations designed to stop charging horses. The charging cavalry slammed into Yue Fei's defensive lines, but for the first time, the Jin warriors could not break through. The disciplined formation held strong. At the perfect moment, Yue Fei ordered a counterattack. His soldiers surged forward with unstoppable force, pushing the enemy back across the battlefield. The once unstoppable Jin army was forced to retreat. For the first time in years, the invaders had been decisively defeated. News of Yue Fei's victory spread quickly. Across the countryside, people celebrated the general who had protected their homes and driven back the invaders. Reports of Yue Fei's success reached the imperial court. Messengers rode day and night to deliver news of his victories. Inside the palace, the emperor listened carefully to reports about the rising general. Some ministers praised Yue Fei as the savior of the empire, but not everyone welcomed his growing fame. Some powerful officials began to worry that Yue Fei's popularity was becoming too great. Meanwhile, Yue Fei continued his campaign. His goal was clear: drive the enemy completely out of China and reclaim the empire's lost lands. Battle after battle, Yue Fei pushed the enemy further north. Each victory brought the empire closer to reclaiming its stolen territory. Within just a few years, Yue Fei's forces had recaptured several major cities. For the first time since the invasion, the dream of reunifying China seemed possible. To the people of China, Yue Fei was more than a general. He had become a symbol of hope, a warrior who might finally restore the empire's lost glory. By the late stages of the war, Yue Fei had become the most respected commander in the empire. His victories had pushed the enemy back across large areas of territory. Now he began planning an even more ambitious campaign, one that could change the entire war. Yue Fei's plan was bold. Instead of simply defending the empire's borders, he would push deep into enemy territory. If successful, his campaign could drive the Jin armies completely out of northern China. The Yue family army began its long march north. Thousands of soldiers moved together in perfect discipline, their banners rising proudly above the marching columns. Ahead of them stood powerful enemy strongholds. Cities defended by the armies of the Jin dynasty blocked the path north. Taking these cities would require both courage and brilliant strategy. Under cover of darkness, Yue Fei prepared a surprise assault. His soldiers moved silently through the night, positioning themselves around the enemy fortress. At dawn, the attack began. Arrows filled the sky as Yue Fei's soldiers rushed the walls. The battle for the fortress had begun. When the gates finally broke, Yue Fei led the charge himself. His soldiers surged into the city, forcing the defenders into a desperate retreat. The fortress fell. Another major victory for Yue Fei's army. Each captured city brought the empire closer to reclaiming its lost lands. News of Yue Fei's campaign spread quickly across China. Messengers carried reports of his victories from battlefield to palace. In the imperial court, reactions were divided. Many ministers praised Yue Fei's success and believed he could finally defeat the invaders. But one man strongly opposed the war. The powerful Chancellor Qin Hui believed the empire should make peace with the Jin dynasty. Behind closed doors, Qin Hui began convincing other officials that Yue Fei's growing power could become dangerous. A general admired by the people and loved by his soldiers might one day challenge the throne. Meanwhile, Yue Fei's army fought one of its greatest battles near Zhuxian town. The Jin forces gathered a huge army to stop him. Despite being outnumbered, Yue Fei launched a devastating counterattack. His disciplined soldiers shattered the enemy lines and forced the Jin army into retreat. The victory was stunning. The once unstoppable Jin armies were now retreating deeper into the north. For the first time in years, total victory seemed possible. After the great victory, the Jin armies were in full retreat. For the first time in years, the invading forces were on the run. Yue Fei stood on the edge of complete victory. Yue Fei's army continued pushing north. City after city fell under his command. The dream of reclaiming all lost lands was closer than ever before. Across China, people celebrated. The general who had defended their homes was now reclaiming their future. Hope returned to a nation that had once been on the brink of collapse. But inside the imperial palace, the situation looked very different. Victory on the battlefield created fear within the court. A powerful general, admired by millions, could become a threat. The Chancellor Qin Hui continued to influence the emperor. He warned that Yue Fei's growing power could one day challenge imperial authority. Slowly, doubt began to grow in the emperor's mind. Then a decision was made. The emperor issued a command Yue Fei was to stop his campaign and return immediately to the capital. Messengers rode day and night carrying the emperor's order. They raced across mountains and rivers to deliver the message to Yue Fei. When Yue Fei received the first order, he was shocked. The war was not over. Victory was within reach, but the emperor had commanded him to return. Then came another order, and another. In total, 12 golden commands were sent, each one demanding the same thing: return immediately. Yue Fei faced an impossible choice. If he obeyed, the war effort would collapse. If he disobeyed, he would betray the emperor he had sworn to serve. The words carved into his back echoed in his mind. Serve the country with utmost loyalty. For Yue Fei, loyalty to the emperor was absolute. With a heavy heart, Yue Fei gave the order. The army would retreat. The campaign was over. The soldiers could not believe it. After years of sacrifice and victory, they were being ordered to turn back. Many wept as they left the battlefield. As Yue Fei withdrew, the people begged him to stay. They knew what would happen if the army left, but Yue Fei could not disobey his emperor. As he rode south, Yue Fei looked back at the lands he had fought so hard to reclaim. He knew that everything he had achieved might soon be lost. When Yue Fei returned to the capital, something felt wrong. There were no celebrations, no cheers, only silence and tension hanging in the air. Without warning, imperial guards surrounded Yue Fei. The hero of the empire was suddenly treated like a criminal. Yue Fei was thrown into prison. The general who had defended the nation now sat alone in chains, still loyal, still silent. Officials accused him of crimes, but no real evidence existed. Even those who questioned him knew the charges were empty. Behind it all was the powerful Chancellor Qin Hui. Determined to end the war, he pushed for Yue Fei's execution. In the court, some officials protested. They argued there was no proof, but their voices were ignored. Finally, a decision was made. Without evidence, without justice, Yue Fei was sentenced to death. Even in his final moments, Yue Fei showed no fear. He remained calm, loyal to the very empire that had condemned him. In the year 1142, China lost its greatest general. Yue Fei was executed at just 39 years old. Without Yue Fei, the war quickly changed. The empire lost its strongest defender. Soon after, the Song Dynasty signed a peace treaty with the Jin Dynasty. The empire accepted defeat and lost even more territory. Across the country, people mourned. They knew the truth. The man who could have saved them had been betrayed. Years later, the truth could no longer be denied. Yue Fei was declared innocent. His name was restored with honor. At his tomb, statues of his enemies were placed kneeling in chains, a reminder of betrayal that history would never forget. Today, nearly 1,000 years later, Yue Fei is remembered as one of China's greatest heroes, a warrior who never betrayed his country, even when his country betrayed him.